Hi everyone, Mags Karn here, author of the best-selling ebook, The Tell, a Memoir. A very big thank you to all of you who have downloaded and read it and left a review so far. Because of you, it remains 4.9 stars on Amazon, and as I'm sure you're aware, word of mouth is one of the best forms of advertising ever, so thank you very much. So, The Tell is my family's true story about the very tough, very taboo topic of sexual abuse, and in our case, specifically sibling incest. In 2010, when we learned this had happened within our family, there were very few resources, written or otherwise, out there to help. So we really had to manage this crisis very much on our own in almost total isolation, save for my sister, my mom and dad, and a very tiny handful of my very close friends. As for my daughter, I think she told only one person back then, and that was my niece, which was her same age girl cousin. Beginning today, Tuesday, July 22nd, 2014, I am blogging, and I'm doing it with the byline: no more silence, no more shame. No more silence, no more shame. My book was released just over a month ago on Father's Day, in fact, and almost immediately a half dozen decades-long friends and family members, quite shockingly, reached out to me with similar stories of their own. Stories I had obviously never heard before, stories very much like my family's story. As these stories emerged, I couldn't really fathom how this could be. I mean, how can we as friends, neighbors, family, human beings, as women, how can we be suffering so terribly for so long and so utterly alone and isolated? Since then, several others, including total strangers who have read or heard about my book, have shared with me snippets of their own stories of incest and other types of sexual abuse. So far, I've only heard from women, but obviously this tragedy touches men too. I mean, my son, the perpetrator in our family story, is now a man, and he was a victim too when he was a young boy. Some women have shared with me that they told and either were or were not believed, and some women, believe it or not, have shared with me that they never told another living soul until now, until they told me. Not their parents, not a counselor, not their best friends, not even their spouses, no one. The magnitude of this is not lost on me at all, and in fact, my family can so relate to so many of the emotions that keep this type of abuse such a tightly held secret. So, the recurring theme with all of these tragic stories has been how difficult it is to talk about this because of the stigma, because of the shame. How impossible it is to tell, sometimes for fear of not being believed or whatever. Secrecy is such a big part of sexual abuses of all kind. The secrets start, of course, between the abuser and the abused, and they oftentimes continue for a lifetime, literally a lifetime. I can only imagine how many people go to their graves having kept such a secret. And while the intellectual part of us can say and believe that we are talking about victims here, child victims, victims of crimes, victims of rape, victims of assault, victims of trauma, victims who share none of the blame in these abuses, victims who did not ask for it, victims who did not want it, who did not deserve any of it. While the intellectual part of us can see it in those terms, the emotional, human part of us can also relate to why this is such a difficult topic to share. We can relate to the embarrassment and to the shame and isolation where there should be none of those. Just as, a victim of a hit and run feels no embarrassment, no shame. Just as a victim of a shooting or a stabbing feels no embarrassment, no shame, neither should victims of sexual abuse feel embarrassed or shamed. Well, what I know about so-called taboo topics is that when we can talk about them more openly, when more and more of us realize that we are not alone. We are not alone. We are not alone. When the silence is shattered, so is the stigma and the shame. Most of us can remember when LGBT issues were taboo. Now we celebrate same-gender relationships and marriages and families. Our grandparents can remember when talking about anything sex-related was taboo. Now we have sex ed in schools, not to mention all over social media, the interwebs, television, radio, movies, etc. Our parents can remember when mixing races was taboo. Now my own family is mixed race. talking about things helps to eventually remove that stigma. So I plan to talk about this a lot. As much as you want to hear about it, as much as you'll share your own stories, and I plan to do it as openly and freely as I can while still respecting my family's privacy and more specifically my daughter's desire for anonymity at this time. So obviously Mags Karn is a pen name, but it is the name I'll use for blogging. And just like in the book, I'll refer to my kids as Evie, Lala, Phoebes, and T, and to my husband as Perry. If you happen to know my family, I ask that you please not identify us publicly in any manner by real names, by photographs, where we live, work, go to school, etc. Thank you in advance for respecting our privacy for my children's sake. In a perfect world, it wouldn't matter if I showed my face or used our real names. Maybe someday, maybe even soon, I don't know. Now, if you have a question for me about my family situation, just ask. If you have a story you'd be brave enough to share anonymously, perhaps in a written interview, please let me know. If you'd consider allowing me to do an on-camera mini interview, even if it's just the back of your head, wow, you are brave and you're my hero, so please get in touch with me. If you have other related stories you'd like us to explore, let me know. I mean, this blog is for you. No more silence. No more shame. Thanks, y'all.